Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Hut podcast. This start of the show is meant to be a short introduction. However, it's ended up just being us all getting our own back on the people who have previously introduced us before. So in that vein, I'd like to start by introducing a man with a lot of charm, talent and wit. Unfortunately, Bob couldn't be with us this week. So instead, we have our resident Jambo, Gav, who last week spoke about how Hearts had three consecutive games unbeaten. Well, Gav, after that weekend, that'll make four, eh? Next up, it has been said that nothing is impossible. Well, whoever said that's a liar, because if we look at Martin, he's been doing nothing for years, or as he calls it, joinery. And last, but by no means least, we have James. Now, as we all know, James and I have opposing views on almost everything, as James has alluded to before. Which is why I tend to liken his contributions to that of steer horns. A point there, a point here, and a load of bull in between. So on that note, let's move on to our first topic. The Scottish national team are 3 games into the World Cup qualifying run, with 2 draws and a win. Is this good enough from what we expect, seeing recent performances before that? Martin, over to you.
I sort of just want to see how everybody thinks the Scottish national team's doing. As Bruce says, 3 draws and a win against a pub team. Is that enough? Because usually what happens with Scotland is we lose a lot of points early on, and then it gets to the end gate and we're pushing, we've got the chance of making it, and then we fall at the last hurdle. I think the Scottish team's in a very good place just now. I think it's, especially since we've got 4 players in McGinn, Robertson, Tierney and McTominay, who are playing at quite a high level. They're not just playing within the English Premier League, but they're playing extremely well. They're first team players, they're players that pundits are talking about within a team. How does everybody think the campaign's going so far? Gav, how do you think it's going?
I think it's been an alright start. I think the sooner we get McBurney out of there, the better. He's just a waste of a pick in the squad, isn't he? I'm looking forward to seeing Che Adams more. I think what we've seen so far is a good sign, especially when we had him and Dykes up front, and he knows the national anthem, which is very impressive considering that clearly Grant Hanley and Kieran Tierney don't.
Gav has a very big thing about learning the national anthem. Every Scottish player, in my opinion, should at least attempt it a little bit.
It's the pride of playing for your country. It's the pride of getting picked and saying you're representing the country. You should be there, heart and soul into it. And the fact that Che Adams, an Englishman, if you want to say that, can go and learn the national anthem and sing it. Why can 2 folk who were born and bred here not?
I was slightly impressed with Che Adams singing along with the national anthem. There's been a few English players playing for Scotland in the past, Don Hutchison, Matt Elliott, players like that, who came in. I don't think Matt Elliott had even been in Scotland before he played for Scotland, and they just stand their national anthem. It's just another game for them. It's a chance to raise the profile.
It's interesting you mentioned the national anthem, because my thoughts are if Darius can attempt to sing the national anthem, then the Scottish national team have no excuse, because, Darius is Darius. Anyway, what I was going to say about the Scottish national team was I would agree with you, they're in a good place. However, how many times do we have to play Israel before we can get a win? Because we've not beaten them since 2018. We've played them 4 times since then, and we've still not come away with a win. How many times do we have to play Israel to come away with a result?
One thing that I noted in the international break was, why is Christie in the team before David Turnbull, or even in the squad? Maybe it's because I watch Celtic week in, week out, but when you've got Falkirk Football Club mocking him because his shots are more likely to hit the BP than the back of the net, then it's just shocking, and particularly the way that Steve Clarke sets up with the 3 at the back. David Turnbull is
It
a
suits
set
Turnbull.
piece specialist. He does put a good ball into the box, and I think it would be a nice benefit to the team rather than Ryan Christie, who should be playing at Murrayfield.
I've got to agree. I've seen Turnbull play a few times, and he's an edge and seat player. He sort of gets the ball, and you can see something's going to happen. Christie, I think, used to have that about him, but I don't know what's happening. He used to be deadly from 20, 25 yards, and he's just not got the connection that he used to get.
He's been
That's
coached
when he
by
was
Neil Lennon.
That's when he was at Inverness and at Aberdeen. Since then, he's actually played games for Celtic. So then that's just.
I think he scored a nice
So
goal
again-
at Murrayfield against a certain team from Edinburgh, if I remember right, Gavin. That put him onto
Funnily
the
enough-
spotlight at Celtic.
Funnily enough, you should say that after he said he should be playing at Murrayfield.
Yeah, he's got a track record there.
So, looking at the team, obviously international football is an extremely different area to improve the team. I think Steve Clark's done well in managing to get Shea Adams in. I think striker's been one of the positions we have to improve. Lee Griffiths has obviously had a bit of a fall from grace. I think when he scored the 2 free kicks against England in the 2-0 game against them, he was sort of right up there, one of the best in world football, but sorry, he was well looked upon within world football, and he's just had a massive fall from grace from that. I think he does get match fit and get back in. I'm still hoping he can get himself back into the Scotland team and do something that I think he's got the ability. But there's certain areas in the team that you can improve on. So obviously within the goalkeeper, David Marshall, and obviously infamous saves and the penalties to get us into the Euros. Centre half's always been an issue for me with Grant Hanley's had his chance before, didn't really do it. He's getting a chance again. I think he's actually done reasonably well over the past couple of games.
Apart from not singing the national anthem.
And your middle of the park's pretty strong, I would say. Sort of obviously you've got two of the best left backs in world football. Right back still I'm not overly keen on. But I think we're in an extremely strong place. I think looking at the league that we're in, I was looking at the FIFA positions. Denmark are 10th in the world. Quite possibly going to top our league. You've got Austria sitting 34th in the world. When we played Austria, I think we were as good as them. I think we probably should have / could have won that game. Israel are 84th in the world. We should be beating teams like that. And we are currently sitting 44th in the world. Not that the FIFA rankings are everything to go by, but the way the group's going is the first place goes through, second place goes to a playoff. I can't see us getting first place. What does everybody else think?
I think it's going to be hard. Denmark's a good team. If I remember correctly, they put a good couple of goals behind Austria as well. So, yeah, a tough one.
So,
I think
so
it was
we're
3-0,
playing for
James.
playoffs.
Mm.
So we're playing for playoffs.
Yeah, I think playoffs are possible. You mentioned that you think Scotland played well against Austria. Well, the expected goals to bring this back was at 1.64 to Scotland and 1.43 to Austria. So we should have won that game.
So within reason, quite even. But I think that looking about the pitch, they're a better type of football player. I thought. I think there's a couple of holes to sort of plug in it. We should be beating teams like Israel.
One person that I want to come out of retirement for the Euros, and it kills me to say it, but it's Alan McGregor. I think David Marshall has an error in him. We found that out in this international break. There's a reason why Celtic let Craig Gordon go. He's had a good season, but again, he made quite a big howler against the Faroe Islands. Got away with it, but there is a mistake in Craig Gordon always.
I'm pretty sure he passed it to the striker.
Whereas
Still
this
best.
season,
But
Alan
James,
McGregor's
sorry.
had a very solid season. He is a good goalkeeper, and I think he is the best keeper that Scotland has out of there.
I'm
think-
putting it out there. Fuck Alan McGregor for what he said, for what he done in the stand, sitting beside Barry Ferguson, the whole 2 fingers up to the whole screw. I'm not having that. He's not within contention. It's not happening.
I think we need to get the famous Scottish goalkeeper who never got a shout, Anthony Amy.
He's finished.
He's not finished. He's not finished. He must be in his mid-40s now, but he's not finished.
I would tend to agree with James. You'll be surprised to hear. I think Alan McGregor should be the Scotland national goalkeeper. He is an absolute phenomenon and stalwart in goals. However, James, I don't know what you're talking about because Craig Gordon is living it up in the Championship, and he's living the high life. So he's all right.
To be fair, I'd be more than happy with Craig Gordon not getting called up to the national team because of his call-up. We've done shite.
Yes,
But in
because the
terms of-
goalkeeper got called up, he's lost a couple of games.
No, the goalkeeper and the right back. Michael Smith got called up to Northern Ireland, and again, we've had players playing there and shouldn't be playing there. And yeah, Ross Stewart should go back to Livingston, but apparently he's going to get signed permanently, which is a great move. But no, to talk about the goalkeeping situation, I do think I'm going to have to agree with Martin in that. I agree that McGregor's been a good keeper, been on good form this year for Rangers domestically. However, if I'm going to sit here and take the stance of you should have pride playing for your national team, singing I'm not going to say national anthem again to trigger James, but I'll say sporting anthem to keep him happy, then McGregor shouldn't be in contention because of his actions.
So
I think there comes a time where one has to
Gav,
show
you're happy for
forgiveness.
us not to qualify for the World Cup
We
I think
might.
there's a principle
if it came down to it, and it was. But if it came down to it and it ended up being, now I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but if it came down to it and it was mistakes at the back that cost us the World Cup qualifying, you're happy for us not to qualify because we didn't choose the strongest goalkeeper in the country?
I think there's other goalkeepers there who can push him. Like when John McLaughlin was at Hearts.
Aye.
He was one of the best goalkeepers in the country. He did brilliant at Hearts. He went down to Sunderland and he lost form. Not the first keeper to move from Hearts to Sunderland and lose form. That's not the point. The team
Sure, there comes a time when one has to show forgiveness and move on for the better good of the team.
I never thought I would see a point where James and I were agreeing on a situation. This is strange for me.
James, sometimes forgiveness needs
honestly not having it. It's not. I know it's Easter. I know it's a time for forgiveness. I know all that. He stuck his fingers up to the fans. It's not even to the fans, to the nation. It's a national team. And he's sticking his fingers up to a national fan base.
I might
Yes,
be
it was a while ago.
I might be able to convince Martin otherwise here, but James said about being forgiveness. In my opinion, if it was going to be forgiveness, it would need to start with an apology. Martin, if he came up with an apology, would you accept him onto the team?
No, fuck him.
So, Martin, again, you're quite happy for us not to reach that playoff spot if it came down to the issues at the back, because we didn't appoint the best goalkeepers.
Ability. I mean, what age is it? Anybody off the top of the head?
9.
He's
Late
almost.
30s.
It's not a long-term aspect, let's say. So
to be fair, again, we're overlooking two of the best keepers in Scottish. We're overlooking two of the best keepers in Scottish football here with James Bundy and Martin Pivey in this chat.
Exactly.
I've even got my tie on for the call-up.
Aye.
Where's your cap?
It's in my other room. I could have put it on, but sadly, alas, it's not.
With the head
to
of
me
a season hairline.
It would have.
Drifting away from the goalkeeper position, I do think across the centre of the park, Scotland are probably about as strong as they've ever been. And that said, I mean, Scotland have had teams with Souness and everybody else in them. Looking across the centre of the park, it's difficult to actually pick who you're going to play, and that's in a good way just now. McGinn's done extremely well. I'd like to see him pushing forward and doing well. McTominay, obviously still playing for Man United as much as I think his temperament and his attitude and everything's right, maybe lacking a bit of ability for the Man United level, but obviously still more than enough for what Scotland need. McGregor's been in there constantly. Christie, let's move on. And there's definitely a strength to the centre of the park. And with Steve Clark bringing in Shea Adams up front, Shea Adams is a massive addition to the squad, especially when you look at sort of the lacking goals that we've been recently, creating chances and not scoring.
Another person to come back in to the Scotland team is James Forrest.
Yeah.
He might not be
who's
the
done
most
extremely
suited.
well for Scotland, actually.
He's not the most suited to the 3-5-2, but when Scotland is struggling for a right back against an attacking team, why not put James Forrest in the team? He scores goals, gets assists. He would add to the team's output, and it would maybe result in a win against Israel. You'll be pleased to hear, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
I think James Forrest is actually. I do think it's weird. There are certain players who play better for the country than they do for their club teams. I thought Kenny Miller was one. I thought Kenny Miller did a lot better for Scotland. James McFadden did a lot better for Scotland at the club level. And I think Forrest has sort of drifted on that level where I think he scored a fair amount of goals for Scotland, and not in comparison to Celtic, he hasn't played well for Celtic as well, but I do think that he'd be a good addition to the team if he hadn't played well for Scotland.
James Forrest is a good player. He's underrated within Celtic and Celtic fans. He's been out injured most of the season, but he started yesterday against who will we play? Falkirk. We're playing Falkirk. And he scored a goal there, so not the best opposition, but he scored a goal and hopefully coming back.
I think so. What do you think chances of Scotland finishing second then? Do you think we've got enough in it to finish ahead of Austria and Israel? James, what do you think?
I think Austria away is going to be the tie that determines it. Unless there's a slip up in any other game, I think that's going to be the one that decides it. We're better than Israel, but Austria is the one to look out for.
Bruce, you've got a grimace on your face.
We have enough to do it, but it's the best Scotland team I've seen and definitely a wee while, but we can't see many points against Israel. What hope have we got? You just said they were 84th, I think it was, in the world rankings. Games we've played them since 2018. We still can't beat them. What's the odds, as James said, taking Austria away? Not so sure. I think we've got enough to do it, but whether we do or not, it's a different story.
So that was a yes or a no?
I'm going to say yes.
Gavin?
I'm going to go a yes, mainly because I feel like the strike partnership could be key once we get them meshing, firing out on all cylinders. Also with Martin, you said about McGinn playing really well recently. He's showed that on this international break. If we can get him playing a bit more attacking, he seems to kind of thrive there for Scotland. So I think with his goals coming in clutch and being important for us this time round, it will be going forward. But James said about possibility of Forrest coming back. And then, as I said, we can get Adams and Dykes working well together, get McBurney to fuck. Then
David Turnbull.
Oh yeah, and David Turnbull. We'll get to David Turnbull in as well, and then we'll be laughing. Win the World Cup. Who cares about qualifying for it? We'll win it.
Let's win the World Cup. Let's go.
But first things first. Before we worry about that, first things first. We need to get them all sitting down with the lyrics to Flower of Scotland. That's the first step to success here.
Right, so
we can get Darius to teach them it.
In my opinion, I think Scotland are good enough to do it. I think we've actually got to the point now, and not just with the players playing within the English Premiership. Obviously, English Premiership is one of the best leagues in the world, and you can, as a national team, you can a lot of players playing there. The players that are playing there are all towards the top of the league, so it's all must win. They've got the better mentality of we'll win every game. And I think 4 players will drive us forward to win it, even though 2 of them play in exactly the same position. I think Austria will come second, Austria will come third, and Israel after that. I think Scotland, I don't think we'll be pushing Denmark to win it. I think Denmark will win it at Qatar, and I think it'll be a dogfight for the next 3 to come second. I think Scotland will win that.
Great. Well, for everyone watching, let us know what you think, where Scotland will finish in the World Cup qualifying group, and should Alan McGregor be called up for the Euros, which starts in the summer. But moving on, I might be wearing red, white and blue, but my football team is Celtic. And this week, we have been heavily linked with Eddie Howe as our new manager, with rumours saying that he's going to be announced early next week. From a personal perspective, I think it's quite an exciting appointment. Bruce spoke very highly of him in last week's episode. I think he plays attractive football. He develops young players well, and he obviously took Bournemouth up from League Two to the Premier League and kept them there for a good number of seasons. I do have some concerns, though. He did suffer homesickness in Burnley, so how is he going to cope in Glasgow? He also, his teams concede a lot of chances, and Celtic's defence has been weak this season. If he struggles with Nathan Ake, then God help him with Shane Duffy. And he also spent a lot of money as well. And a mixed transfer record. And I would say it actually got worse as time progressed. £20 million for Solanke and somebody else. Was it? I can't even know. It was just a lot of money with not a lot of goals in return. And with Celtic's transfer record this season of Barkas, Duffy, we do need somebody to come in and restore the transfer success of Celtic. And I don't know what Eddie Howe brings to that, but we'll see. I think there's more positives than there are negatives. But it'd be good to hear the thoughts of the rest of the panel. I'm going to start with probably the person who's going to have the least bias and speak to the person whose team's currently not in the league. And I'm going to Gavin. Gavin, what do you think?
And you want him to support you now.
What do you think about the possibility of Eddie Howe becoming Celtic manager?
I think it would be a brilliant appointment. I'm sure I said it when he was first linked with the job. I was a big admirer of his, especially like when he was coming through the leagues with Bournemouth. I was going through college doing coaching. Football was one of my sports. Was doing part-time football coaching at the time as well. So to sit and watch him and his philosophy unfold and how he develops, as you said, younger players, gets them pushing, and in terms of the level of football that he was coaching at, to get them coming through the ranks, playing football and selling them on for a profit. At the end of the day, that's the Scottish League's a feeder league. You're going to get players in and sell them on to make money. If that's not the kind of aim for the majority of players in Scottish football, then you're wrong. Because that's what's going to happen automatically. Even Celtic do it. So for that side of things, I think he'd be a brilliant appointment. And also he'd bring back the sort of academy feel of Celtic, where I think the most recent there's been a couple with Hendry, but he's been out on loan, been playing it all right for Scotland, as we talked about that topic. But he's been out on loan and he's linked to be getting sold.
Hendry wasn't even academy. We got him from Dundee. The last one
Oh,
really was Tierney and McGregor.
And then there's been a hype about Dembele, because I know he came on to play, I think it was 2 years ago in the Scottish Cup final against Hearts that he came on.
Yeah.
There was a big talk about him and Aaron Hickey, the two 16-year-olds, were face to face. Again, Hearts selling on a 16-year-old. Dembele still at the club, yet to feature much or fulfill his promise. But I feel like he could bring back that whole good feel about the academy and get it flourishing again.
That's one big thing that's been a frustration for Celtic fans this season. It's that the academy hasn't really been a place for talent to come into the team. And Cameron Harper, not many football fans will know of him in Scottish football, but he was a very exciting young prospect. He's American, but he came through Celtic's academy, and he's actually just went to New York Red Bulls, I think it is. And he said that one of the reasons was because there was no path to the first team. He plays in a similar position as young Dembele, Karamoka Dembele. And this season, as has already been mentioned, James Forrest has been injured and he's attacking right midfield. And rather than playing Ryan Christie out there, surely it would have been better bringing one of these young players into the team, particularly how poor we've been playing, particularly Christie. So surely bringing a young player into the team and allowing him some game time would have been a better long-term thing.
Surely somebody like John Kennedy, who's dealt with the youth academy, would do that though.
Well, John Kennedy's not done that since he's been interim manager. In fact, yesterday I was shocked with the team when it came through.
Yeah.
We'd not given Barkas a chance. We stuck with Scott Bain. Scott Brown was playing, and he's not there next season. Why not integrate Sorrow into the team and the philosophy more? He played Lee Griffiths up front. I don't think anyone expects Lee Griffiths to be at Celtic next season. So why not give Ayeti and Klamala a chance? I just think John Kennedy's wasted his audition to become Celtic manager or even manager of any team in Scotland.
So the thing with Eddie Howe coming in, Eddie Howe was overseeing 3 promotions within 7 years. And I think everybody's going to say that's a massive thing to take a team within 3 promotions, not even being contention for promotion, but being middle of the league, going from 1 promotion, 2 promotions, 3 promotions within 3 years, and 7 years, sorry. And to do that and transform your team and have a mentality to bring in, he's done a masterful job within Bournemouth to do that.
What we're all forgetting here is that they were on the brink of
any European football.
I'm saying what we're forgetting here is that they were on the brink of relegation to the non-league.
Yeah.
They were almost getting relegated out of League Two. That's not been mentioned yet. So for him to take a team from the bottom of League Two.
Yeah, and I'm all for that because he's not just took out a team that's top of the league and then promoted them 3 times. He's took them to the bottom, got them to the top of that league, promoted them within 7 years. It's a massive feat, and he's done extremely well doing that. But he's not experienced European football. He's not got to that level of playing against Celtic are a team who's played against Barcelona. They're a team that's played against Man United. They're a team that plays against some of the highest teams within the European football. And he's only played within teams within his league. Is that, I mean, the problem I've got with Eddie Howe getting there is Brendan Rodgers was a massive appointment. Brendan Rodgers was bigger than I was expecting to go to Celtic. And he went there and he's put a philosophy on, and he's done extremely well there. And Bruce, I'm sure, will say without any contention. But he's set out a team, he's done a principle, he's done everything the way he wanted to do it, and then he's got his move elsewhere. Eddie Howe's not as high a level as Brendan Rodgers is, I feel.
I think the thing that Celtic fans need to accept is that we're not going to get the best manager in the world. We do have restrictions because of the league that we're in. And as it's a feeder league for players, it's also a feeder league for managers. Celtic is a very good club to come to if you're an ambitious young manager who wants to manage in the English Premier League. And I think Brendan Rodgers, though he did well with Liverpool, the way that it ended there with the collapse just before the end of the season, a wee slip from Steven Gerrard, and then the next season
reaching over to Carragher's leg,
and then the next season Liverpool struggled from the beginning. So he did a good job, but he was out of favour within the English market. And then he saw Celtic, and it was a mutual benefit relationship.
Stepping stone.
Yeah, but it was a stepping stone for Rodgers, and then Celtic would benefit from him. There was not a manager of Rodgers' calibre available for Celtic at this moment in time. But I think out of the managers available that were realistic, Eddie Howe's probably the best one to get, unless we went into continental Europe, where there's a couple, but I'm not sure how realistic they were. So I'm quite excited by Eddie Howe. I think he'll modernise the club and get us moving into the trajectory that we should have been continuing under Rodgers.
I spoke in one of the earlier episodes about different types of managers, and I spoke about sort of your Jose Mourinho coming in, win mentality, buy lots of players, do everything in short space of time, get sacked within a couple of years. And I spoke about your Eddie Howe's who'd come in and they would take a team from ground level up, and they would sort of concentrate on the academy, they'd have a long-term plan. And I do feel that Eddie Howe, I think Eddie Howe will use Celtic as a stepping stone, but I don't think that will stop him using the academy and everything. The benefit of using a team as a stepping stone is you've got to get the best you can out of that team. It's a win-win situation for everybody, where if you're using something as a stepping stone, you've got to go in and do it the best that you can. And if you don't do the best that you can't use it as a stepping stone. So he has to go into Celtic and do the best that he can, because he was talked within when Arsenal were looking for a manager. He was within the argument of Arteta, and Howe was in there with a shout of the Arsenal job. And I think that's where he sees himself. I might be wrong, but I think he will use Celtic as a stepping stone. I don't see that as a bad thing for Celtic. I think Celtic will take him in. He will set everything out the way he wants it. He will take the title from Rangers. He will do everything from that, and then he will. Sorry, I'm looking at Bruce's face here. And then eventually, within 3 or 4 years, he'll get a bit of European experience. He will get everything that goes with that, and he'll use Celtic as a stepping stone to go at a higher level of football. I don't see that as a bad thing for Celtic.
Neither do I.
The two things that I'm going to make a point before we let the biased opinion talk, because he's not actually had a word in edgeways yet. So, as you said about the Arsenal job, Martin, Eddie Howe has always been linked with big jobs. Before Gareth Southgate got the job, he was linked with that England job.
Yep.
He's been linked with Arsenal. He's been linked with the top 4, top 6, if you want. So he's always had that kind of prestige and potential. So as you're saying, for him to go to a team like Celtic, who are a big team in terms of Scotland, in terms of Europe, you'd probably class them as a big team because of their history more than their recent performances. So again, it gives them that opportunity to go and get experience there before moving to a bigger team. But James, going to a point you made about the international market, the only other big name that kind of caught my eye when I was reading the odds on who was going to be announced was Rafael Benitez. Now, he was most recently manager of Daoyang Yingfang, or whatever they're called in China, who have just went absolutely bankrupt. So I think he would take any job at the moment. But as you said, with Celtic playing in the Scottish League comes restrictions. Would you be able to afford his wage? he comes with the European experience. Do you want that so much? Because Europe's, at the end of the day, James, I think you'd agree as Celtic, Europe's where you want to be performing well. You're expected to perform well in the league and domestic cups, and Europe's where you need to start excelling.
I think the problem with Rafa Benitez is he's a manager who comes in and gets results. He's not one who really develops a philosophy and builds the team up over time and develops players, and he coaches them well, but he doesn't develop them. It's not a long-term project. But if you're a feeder club, which Celtic are for the English market, you need to be a team that develops and continuously tries to be at the front of the market in terms of the use of data, coaching, and try and get the most exciting things that are in the market and adopt them and see if they work. And if they do, you're
like
winning.
Expected
goals, but even more advanced mathematical algorithms. But
Celtic Football Club, you need to have a look at this young man, James Bundy, tactical analysis, get him in on the books, on the payroll.
Yes. I'm not even giving away some of the more advanced ones in the hope that people are watching and invite me to an interview to discuss them. But no, I think there was a couple of names mentioned from the continent that were quite exciting. One was the former Dortmund manager. The name passes me, but we were linked with him. And then we were also linked with Ralf Rangnick. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was the person behind the Red Bull project and implementing the philosophy of young players playing attacking football and being a feeder club. And that obviously had its lures of excitement because that's exactly what Celtic should be doing. But before I continuously talk about my point of view, it'd be good to hear the point of view from the other side of the city. Are you scared by the prospect of Eddie Howe, or is it going to be Championship 2 or 56 or 2, whatever it is?
The first thing he's going to say is it's not going to matter because we've got Stevie G.
Yeah, until he goes to Liverpool.
Howe is a very good manager. I'm not going to deny that. I mentioned last week at the round table what you guys all summarised about the promotions, and as we all know, unfortunately, they don't play in the Premier League anymore. The Championship has been abundantly clear over a numerous amount of podcasts. We all know that it's a well-known fact.
For some people,
no, he's a very, very good manager. He's got a big job to do at Celtic. Celtic are currently broken, and he's got a lot of fixing to be doing to getting them back up to where they should be. But you'll be close, but you're not.
Bruce, 1 second. So they should be top.
Well, apparently, if you read everybody else's opinion, isn't supporting the Rangers. But
good choice.
The Rangers. The
Rangers. The Rangers.
So
that was just a new team.
So yeah,
accurate definition.
What I would say is you'll be close, but you're not taking it again next season. It's going to be number 2 in the bag out of 56 league titles next season.
I don't think Celtic are in as bad a state as fans are making out.
No.
Celtic should have won most of the games we played this season. We didn't, obviously, but
thanks for that in-depth analysis. Was that through expected goals? Was it?
Well, expected goals, but just watching the games as well. Edward, fantastic player, but he's not an out-and-out striker. We've missed that this season. We've been awful at defending set pieces. Get that sorted, we'll be back in the title race next season.
James, you just were way off the mark. You just were way off the mark.
My question is, Bruce,
I don't see you taking next season. It's going to be two in a row.
No, there was a couple of games where we were bad, and it was bad tactics, bad coaching. The players were not as fit as they should have been. Neil Lennon, we know my thoughts about
Neil
him.
Lennon.
But I think Eddie Howe comes in, players will get fitter, which has been a problem with Celtic this season. I think the tactics will be more shrewd, and I think we've got a big rebuilding job to do. Edward will be away. Ayer will probably be away. Christie will probably be away. and Brown's away. So that's a whole spine of the team you've got to rebuild, including the goalkeeper, where we'll be investing as well. So it's a massive rebuilding job that Celtic's got to
Is
do.
this you getting your excuses in early, is it?
No, it's just laying out the facts as they are. But it is if the transfer market goes well, which is one concern that I do have about Eddie Howe, but if that goes well, I think Celtic will be there or thereabouts next season. The one manager
James.
which I wish we did inquire about, of course, I don't know if we did or not, is Graham Potter from Brighton. I think he might have been tempted. Of course, he's got an exciting project happening with Brighton, but they're not going to be challenging for trophies and so on. He could have came up to Celtic, win trophies, European football, and managed to get himself a top job in England. But we didn't, and it's going to be Eddie Howe.
I do agree with you with the Graham Porter, but can I ask James, have you done any research on how Eddie Howe's transfer window management's went? How has he been sort of buying players in?
He's been pretty
How many
poor.
times can you say how in one sentence?
Never mind Eddie Howe. Eddie who?
He's been pretty poor. I did come up with a list. That's what I'm getting just now. With the players.
How does Solanke go on?
Continue, James.
Well, while James is looking at that, my question for Bruce is: how can you sit and say that a team is broken when they are second in the league? As much as we know Celtic should be performing better, that more was expected of them, they're still second. So even a broken Celtic is still above and beyond the best of Scottish football. The rest of Scottish football.
And the fact that you're saying the best of Scottish football is Hibs, who third in it, is great, Gav. The thing I would like to, before you say anything, Gav, the best of Scottish football is Hibs. I got that. That's fine. So I think with that, I'd like to say Hibs are third just now and not actually done well. Hibs should have been. There's a lot of points Hibs should have picked up, and they should be chasing Celtic for second in the partner going in. And I think I said it in the group chat about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and then we drew against Motherwell and lost against Livingston. And I think Hibs had the chance. There was opportunities for Hibs to be pushing Celtic. Obviously, Aberdeen are doing completely terrible just now. But back on Eddie Howe, how are you doing, James?
Yes, so to name some players that he signed to try and score some goals for Bournemouth: Arnaud Danyamo, Jordan Ibe, Dominic Solanke, Max Grado, Lewis Mosit, Glenn Murray, Joanne Iturbi, Lee Tomlin, Lewis Graben, and Benny Afobe. Great players, and the records.
I count 6 goals within them.
Benny Afobe did all right with them at championship level. Arno, he's got 3 names. Arno, it begins with a D and a G. I know that. It's Daruma Greenwald or whatever. He's playing much more right in the championship, and he seems to be doing well in the left wing. But apart from that, I have to agree with you. It's very poor showing, especially because Lys Mousset was meant to be the next big thing. He went to Sheffield United. He's done nothing. Dominic Solanke, Jose Mourinho called him the next, whatever, Messi, Ronaldo. He called him the next big main focal point for Chelsea. Done nothing.
Yes. There is this thing within football, though. I think Celtic are now setting out. Mackay's coming in as what's his role? Sorry.
So Mackay is going to be chief executive, replacing Peter Lawwell. We are supposed to be bringing in a director of football and a technical director. Yeah. So we're copying.
So your director of football is going to be controlling a lot of the scouting policies.
Yeah.
And that within a manager's role now isn't the complete scouting and controlling what happens with a team. He has to rely on within a team of scouts, director of football, to actually bring in the players that he's wanting for his team. And it's not going to be just down to Eddie Howe to decide what players he wants. And you've always got certain players who come to a team, didn't perform, and then later within their career do perform. Your sort of De Bruyne's or Salah's or players like that they've came into a team to do a job, weren't they actually mature enough to do it yet, and then matured later on. It's difficult for a scouting team to pick players, but I think Celtic have been extremely good in the scouting market previously to be bringing players in cheap and selling them on extremely expensively.
We have, but I think we might be opening Pandora's box if we go down Celtic scouting department. So to finalise this part of the conversation, I'm just going to go around and ask a simple question. Is Eddie Howe the best man to become Celtic manager? Starting with Bruce.
I'm not going to give a one-word answer. However, to answer your question, yes, but you still have to win the league next season.
Okay. Martin?
Yeah, within the people who are available at the time, yes, I do think Celtic will win the league next year with him.
Gavin?
I think yes. Again, as Martin said, out of the people available, a lot is going to come down to the director of football kind of role, if you will. I'd make a recommendation of Craig Levein, cracking man, who's available as our role at the moment.
No, thank you. But
I think you should take him up on that offer, James.
James, what's your thoughts on the role?
My thoughts.
Sorry, James, you said as well in a previous podcast you would have rather the director of football role got filled before the managerial role. So what's your thoughts on that one as well, quickly?
Yes, I would prefer the director of football to appoint the manager. I wouldn't be surprised if both are announced at the same time this week. And the director of football has already been in place, but not announced. Season ticket sales are coming up, and it's always good to have announcements before they go on sale, particularly when you're charging over £500 to watch games on Celtic TV.
Which again is something you've also mentioned on this podcast.
Yes, but I think if they hadn't, maybe Graham
Season
Potter...
tickets at Easter Road and Hibs TV are also available.
Likewise, Titan no even point in talking about that.
All teams have season tickets available, just to clarify, for any legal reasons.
Including the league winners.
Well, it's good to know that Manchester City have season tickets. But yes, Graham Potter would have probably been my ideal one. I think he's within the realms of being realistic, but Eddie Howe, I'm happy with. I'm not going to complain with that. I think he's got some exciting potential. But moving on from Celtic, we're going to move to a different sport, and Formula One. We've talked about it the past few weeks, and people might have noticed that I've been silent in both conversations. I think I described the sport as people getting into cars, they drive around, and the one with the fastest car win. But Gavin is a big fan of the Formula One, and he's going to make the case and tell me why my ignorance is wrong. So over to you, Gavin.
Well, last week I managed to kind of surprise you all with the popcorn when I was waiting on you dissing me. This week I'm going to start a drinking game. So every time Bruce mentions Williams or being the biggest fan, I'm going to take a drink.
Go for it, Bruce.
My first question is really going to be
Williams.
What interests you in a sport? Just a quick round the lot of yous.
Bruce.
James, what interests you in a sport?
I think it's the story and being part of it. I think it is the connection between players and clubs and the fans. And I also think that it is, tactics. I do think tactics are interesting, and the incorporation of data into sport, such as expected goals, which I'm not advertising, just to clarify. It is something that I find quite exciting.
Martin, what interests you in a sport?
Competitiveness. I think there's a certain amount of competing against each other, trying to be the best. I think that's maybe the main thing, that there is a lot of tactics within it. I enjoy watching the evolution of a team I enjoy watch. If you concentrate on one team, then you can actually see them evolve from an okay team to a better team to a great team. That's the sort of thing I enjoy in sport.
Now, Bruce, knowing you for a long time, obviously all my life, and for our viewers looking at you, they can obviously tell that the most thing you enjoy about a sport is going to the pub, having a few beers, and eating a load of pack of crisps. So, but what interests you about a sport? Let everyone know.
Well, I think you'll find that I am a model athlete
Well,
to begin
Slayer.
with, but
Go, Gav.
I am quite a simple-minded individual. I'm sure you'll all agree. So I think for me,
Yes.
what it is something that I actually, okay, right, wow, rude. Something I can easily follow and get my head around. So I quite like golf because I can kind of get my head around golf. I quite like football because I used to referee it, so I generally know the rules of the game. And I quite like sitting watching Formula One because I quite like watching the cars go around the ring, like James mentioned, and it's quite good to watch. I don't get involved with all the technical things about it. I just quite like watching F1. There's so yeah, something that I can easily follow. Like I don't follow cricket because I don't know the rules and I can't bother going into it. And yeah, something that I can get my head around easily.
Right, well, to go into the Formula One aspect, I'm going to correct you, Bruce. It's not a ring; it's a track.
Okay.
If you want a
NASCAR's
ring,
got the ring.
if you want a ring, watch NASCAR. Let's get in the car. What's happening? Right, we're turning left. What's happening next? Oh, guess what? Left-hand turn. James,
I
you
might
never
give that
guess
a
what's
bash.
happened. What's after that
NASCAR.
second left-hand turn?
They overtake, but doing a left-hand turn.
No, they turn left, mate. And then after that, they turn left. And again, they say they've got 4 corners. There's only 2. But that's away from the point. Formula One, this is where I'm going to try and succeed, where, in my opinion, Mitchell, Shahan, and Martin have failed with golf, cricket,
Golf was
and hockey,
awesome.
respectively. But you never really convinced anyone, though, did you? So
Everybody already liked it.
You're preaching
time,
to the converted.
the best time right now is now to get into Formula One, because this is probably going to be the most competitive it has been of the new gen car era, with Red Bull obviously starting to get their finger out, Honda providing the power upgrades on their engine units, but also James, you're saying you like to get in kind of to know the personalities, the fan bases. So again, a very good time to get involved in it, as Netflix has the Drive to Survive series. Season 3 has just been released. So that lets you know a bit more about the drivers, a bit more about the teams, a bit more about the fans. I've seen the first 2 seasons and they're brilliant. Yes, Bruce?
Bruce, high five.
Is Williams on the Netflix documentary?
Williams are in the Netflix documentary. They're featured heavily with
Brilliant. Take a drink.
The whole thing about the owners. And I'm just talking about this first. And also your best pal, Georgie Russell, is as well.
Is he? I'll watch it.
So, James, I would say, as a start there, for you, get to know the teams a bit more, get to know the drivers a bit more. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of good personalities involved in the racing. To go in a wider spectrum, as I said, it is the best time to get involved in it because of the more competitive nature that Martin alluded to, why he enjoys sports. It's coming up now, and I think we all kind of watched the first race. If we didn't watch it, we caught the highlights, but it was a very competitive race in terms of it was right down to the wire. The tactics come into it in terms of when do you pit, when do you not pit, and such. But also it's an exciting time for the feeder into F1, being F2, because with the Mick Schumacher being the champion last year, he's been one of the highest performers in that. With him being promoted to F1, it kind of throws the doors wide open in F2 for someone to go and attempt to claim his spot. And I've spoke to Martin about this as well, that I've never really followed F2 religiously, we'll say. But this year, I'm looking forward to seeing the fight. I'm looking forward to having more of a watch of it. And mainly because F2 takes away that whole big team, wee team mentality. I'm guessing, James, you don't know much about Formula 2.
No, it's the second division. but it's more even
Right.
in the teams.
Yes. So as I said, the teams are moving. They all drive the same car basically. The only difference is what tyres they put on at the time. They all have the same selection of tyres, but the only difference is what tyres they put on and the colour they put it and the driver inside. So the team colours go on it.
I think that's one
It
of
was like
the problems that I have with Formula One, and it would be good for you to correct. I did say my ignorance at the start for a reason. I am pretty ignorant towards the sport, but one of the perceptions that I have is that Mercedes have the best car, Hamilton's the top driver, Hamilton wins. So the first question I would like to ask everyone is, why is there not the same standard of car to see who's the best driver?
Well, everybody's got the same principles to go by, though. Everybody's got the same criteria to build a car. Your team, your car team is not just your driver. It's your band of engineers. Your engineers build your car. So you're given a schematic to go by. You need to have this, you give this, you give this. You build a car as fast as you can that follows these schematics. And they will pick you up on anything you do wrong. And then you pick a driver that goes into that car and wins. So it's not just the fact that you have the fastest driver. Your car comes down to lots of different parts. So yes, there's the fastest drivers. Let's put that to the side. To have the fastest car, you need the best engineers. The engineers will design every different aspect of the car. Some cars perform better in some circumstances. Some cars perform better in other circumstances. And that's down to the engineering role in it. And it's a role that the people who are maybe a bit more ignorant to the sport don't take into account with it. It's a 30, 40 man person, and there is a bigger roll back in practice and stuff, but 30, 40 people to actually decide how fast the car is going, what percentage the fuel's going to the engine, what percentage this, and then it's the slip dip and everything else that goes with it.
But my response to that would be, surely engineering can't be that different. Like, I could understand microseconds or milliseconds of a difference, but there's some cars that go around the track 10 seconds quicker a lap. Why is there such a like a big gap between the teams? I don't understand why a team, an engineer who works for, I don't know, Williams, couldn't come up with the same type of car as Mercedes. I understand fractions and slight difference, but why is it such a big gap between some teams?
You've got to take into account a fraction and slight difference over the course of a lap. That's Gavin, how long's a lap?
It depends. It varies. Completely varies depending on what track you're on. You know, Monaco's one of the shortest tracks, but one of the fastest tracks as well. However, again, those milliseconds, as Martin's saying, one corner is a millisecond. Maybe down at one of the chicanes, there's another one. Depending on when you come off the brake and onto the accelerator, that can determine a second in the race. So those all add up, and that's a difference. And that's where you're saying about the difference between, I don't know, Mercedes and Williams is the fact that, again, that comes down to money. But this is why everyone's getting so invested in it now, in terms of the competitiveness is there with Red Bull coming up. But next year, the regulation changes that are in place is going to bring the pack much closer together. The teams won't be so far off. The money won't be a big aspect of it. That's why a lot of teams this year are using the same setup, the same chassis as the teams that they did use last year. Not only because of COVID and they don't want to go out and invest a hell of a lot of money because it's not there, but because next year there's all these regulation changes from the top rather than just one or two. One of the big regulation changes that they were talking about this season is the rake, which is how high or low the car rides. So that's been one change. It's impacted speed a lot. But then next year, everything's getting scrapped, and it's going right back to square one with regulations. So I think it's a good time to get invested now because of those reasons. And James, is that something you're looking? If that's something you're looking for, is why they're so far apart. That'll be a good time to get involved, because then it should theoretically bring the whole grid closer together in terms of their timings.
Second question, and a second point, and then maybe a follow-up question afterwards. Qualification and pole position.
Yes.
I prefer watching qualification if I do watch anything, because it is who's going to get the fastest lap. But then part of me doesn't understand, why does the fastest driver go at the front? Surely
I completely agree with you, James.
Surely you want overtaking in a sport. So why don't they just scrap qualification and base it on the previous week's results? So have qualification for the first week, so you sort that out, and then the rest of the season, person who comes first in the previous race starts at the end of the pack, and then every position subsequently, and then you have overtaking, because that's what I think. If you watch sports, you want vehicle sports, you want overtaking, and it's quite boring when Hamilton wins pole, gets a good start at the Grand Prix, and he's just driving. He's got no race for the rest of the race. No race for the rest of the race.
So
good words.
To take James's point, basically, has anybody seen stock car racing?
Yes.
Ages ago.
Stock car racing is reverse grid. Basically, the best drivers go to the back, and then there's overtaking. And I do feel that is where Formula One lacks. I think you look at the first race where the Red Bull driver Perez, he had a malfunction early in the race. In the warm-up lap.
Yeah.
He then had to start from the pit. Now, from the pit, he's actually managed to get from the back of the race all the way up to fifth. And that was an interesting part of the race, where somebody's actually got from the back of the race, managed to get overtaken. I actually remember how many people in the race, but he managed to get so many overtakes to get to the point where he's fifth in the race. And that's interesting within it. I do feel that's somewhere their Formula One can improve, where they have and it's an argument that's been put forward to Formula One, where a reverse grid would actually improve the race.
It's definitely a very interesting concept, I'd have to say. And then this is going to bring me back to Formula 2. So we spoke about it when we did the topic about the Bahrain GP, on how they do the sprint races, and they're obviously getting brought in for a couple of races this year for the Formula One. So James, again, as probably the person who's newest to Formula One and probably watches it the least, the Formula 2, they do the sprint races, so it's a cut down version. So I believe in the Bahrain one, it was 23 laps. Top 10 get points, but then they do a second one on the following day. However, the top 10 who get the points, they get flipped. So whoever's first starts 10th. So again, I think that incorporates that sort of aspect into it. But my final thing I want to say about the Formula One, why it's interesting, is we said about tactics, and that you have to kind of look into it quite heavily to get the tactics of when you're pitting people. But when Martin was saying about Sergio Perez's mechanical failure, again, that brings a lot of interest and a lot of excitement into it. To talk about the Drive to Survive again, a big feature in that was last year's big crash with Romain Grosjean, fireball. How on earth he survived, I have no idea. Car was split in two. A bit more excitement. I mean, these are the reasons that a lot of people watch it, is for the crashes, the incidents. You're like, how on earth are they going to recover from that? It's adrenaline, to put it in its simplest form.
I don't want to get overly morbid about this, but the most Gav laughed as soon as I said that. The best part about Formula One races is the crashes, and although it does endanger the drivers, I accept that. But yeah, it's the most fun part, really. I mean, you want to see cars overtaking, you want to see them coming together at points, you want to see them trying to avoid themselves, you want to see somebody pushing somebody else to the limits and somebody else backing off, or two people going for it, and then obviously maybe both of them coming off worse. That's the point of Formula One. That's why you want to see the drivers go against each other to the best that the cars can do. So I want as much overtaking as possible, and I think a reverse grid is the best way to achieve that.
To give another one from my list of things to watch regarding Formula One, has anyone ever seen Rush?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. So it follows the story of James Hunt, Niki Lauda. Again, it lets you see a bit more about their personalities. James, brilliant film. Again, if you want to get into it, I think that's the best place to start, where you kind of see a bit more about them. But I suppose just kind of to end on this, it'd be good to hear what your thoughts are on how to improve it. Obviously, Martin's about reverse grid, so I'm going to ask you, what's your thoughts on the best way to improve it? Maybe give me a couple of examples of things, and then do you think you're going to watch more of it this year at all? So we'll go to Bruce first, since he's been quietest.
Well, I don't know enough about it to, suggest ways to improve it. I'm just obviously getting my head around it, but something I'm going to be watching more, because, as we all know, I've chosen a team to watch this season.
What team? Bruce?
It'll be Williams, in case anybody didn't get that.
Is there a specific driver within that team?
Yeah, good old Georgie Russell.
Sorry, Bruce, my headset went there. What team is that again?
Williams. I'm their, just to make Gav drink again, if you didn't know, I'm their biggest fan.
Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah,
you had a wee bit of a lag there. What was that?
He's our biggest fan, right?
Williams. Yeah, biggest fan, yep.
He's still not finished that can. Tiny sips.
The big can. So I'm glad you're going to be watching more of it this year, Bruce. We'll go to Martin. I'm going to leave James for last, since he's the naysayer in all this. So Martin, apart from the reverse grid, have you got anything else that you think would improve the sport?
I think what they're bringing in a lot with the very different things that they're bringing in, that's going to make it more about the drivers. It should be about the drivers. It shouldn't always be about the car. There should be a certain aspect of the car, but it shouldn't be to the fact where you have to be a Red Bull or a McLaren or a Williams to win. Sorry, Williams, I said Mercedes. You need to. There should be, to a degree, that the person at the back of the pack has a chance to win. And right now they haven't. Okay, the only people with a chance to win are Mercedes, Red Bull, long shot McLaren, but possibly Williams. But there should be a point where everybody within that race has an opportunity to win it, and it's just golden. Ken, every time there's a race, you can who the top three are going to be, or you can who the top five are going to be at least. 3 of the top 5 are going to be on the podium, and you know it from before the race starts. And you have to take that aspect of knowing that away from the race to make it interesting. See if you get a chance, watch MotoGP on the bikes, and it's a shorter race. It's a bit more fun. You might get a chance to actually see the players. You maybe didn't get the personality behind it, but everybody's got a chance to win, and it is a great sport.
To talk about, you're saying about you can always know the top 3. That is before they have any mechanical failures in the formation lap. Hey, Martin, Mr. Perez third. Oh wait, no, I'm going to change that.
He was in the top 5. He was in the top 5. He started. Wait a minute. He started last, and he was in the top 5.
James, I'm going to go over to you. So, as the kind of newest to the sport, a couple of reasons about things that you think could improve it, and also, do you think you watch more of it?
I watched documentaries and films that have been mentioned to give the sport a chance. I think that's only fair. I think
Thank you.
a couple of interesting things have been mentioned. I think the engineering behind the car isn't really explained to fans well. So I know it's engineering at getting the slightest advantage might be quite complicated for people without physics degree, but maybe good explainers from the TV about why teams have designed cars in certain ways. I think equalizing budgets as well. I need my socialist friend Shahan here because I'm something like him. Because, yeah, I do think it's unfair that a team gets a lot of money to spend and other teams just can't match that.
Can you say the same for the Scottish Premier League?
No, and the reason why I take that position is because I think football is a game which is a lot more predictable. Formula One in its current setup is quite
Excuse
predictable.
me, you're the one that's going, Hamilton.
Yeah, but I'm saying Hamilton, in the Formula One sense, not the Scottish football sense, but the
Relegated.
but the
Should have been long ago.
But yeah, the notion of if you've got the best money, you're going to get the best car, and as long as your driver doesn't have a howler, he's going to be in the top five. Um, I think if the money was equalized, it might actually come down more to the engineering and the driving, which might make the sport better. But I'm just throwing ideas out of here, and I feel like I don't know, telling fashion designers how they can improve their cupboards. I'm not an expert in this sport, and I probably should shut up before I make a fool of myself.
Not an expert in fashion either, and it's already done.
I think he looks rather dashing in that tie-in suit.
Look at
However, he
this.
did say that fashion designers. Oh my
It's the
God.
red trousers.
He did say that. However,
He looked rather dashing before he showed me the pink trousers.
he did say that fashion designers. He's talking about how to improve fashion designers' cupboards, not their wardrobes that they actually work on, but their cupboards. So, James, what tins of soup should they keep in their cupboards? That'll be the next question on the round.
Whatever one that they
podcast.
enjoy the taste of the most,
Yeah.
keep them morale up.
So,
Oh.
James, do you think you watch more of the feature races than in Formula One, or just the
Well,
documentaries? And that's
I
to
always watch
see how they are
Monaco, but I don't know if that's to look at the yachts rather than the races. But yes, I
That's
will.
Never a lot of overtaking there.
No, I actually quite like Monaco. I don't know why. It's one.
It makes it
Grand Prix.
exciting though, Martin. There's not a
I
lot of
quite
overtaking,
like.
so when it happens, it's exciting.
But
Yeah, if you get pole, you win.
yeah,
Monaco's like that.
if I'm ever
That's where
on
the
a
tactic
Sunday
and
with
strategy
nothing,
comes on it though.
if there's
Anyway,
nothing,
we're not having this argument.
if there's a Sunday where my diary is quiet, I will put it on and have it on the background rather than ignore it as I've previously done. There you
Okay.
go. That's the
My
commitment
final-
I can give you.
Before we move on, Bruce, what's your feelings on Williams?
Williams are brilliant. Georgie Russell, do you know, as I said before, I could possibly be their biggest fan. Can you finish that, can you, Gav?
A bit of time to
Thanks. Anyway, a final plea to anyone who's watching, who's not a Formula One fan or follower. I think this season's the best season to get into it. If not this season, the next. Definitely check out the Drive to Survive. I've not caught season 3 yet, but I've heard really good things about it, and let us know what you think.
Great. I'll make sure to watch it, Gavin,
Thank you.
and I'll let you know what I do think of it. But to round up the episode, we have got the traditional round table to contend. I'm going to pass over to Bruce. That means that we've all had a topic each this week, which is quite nice. But
Well done.
over to you, Bruce.
That's really lovely and sentimental, James.
Mm.
But yeah, so
You and your
today we
pink
saw
trousers.
today we saw the draws for the 4th and 5th round of the Scottish Cup, with us cramming this year's Scottish Cup majority at the end of the season due to COVID and everything. So what I wanted to know from you guys are the 4 teams that will be in the semi-final once we've played the 4th and 5th round, and then also a winner. So we have Aberdeen or Livingston versus Forfar or Dundee United, Kilmarnock or Montrose versus St Mirren or
Whoa,
Inverness.
whoa, slow down, I'm not written this down yet.
Stranraer, Queen of the South or Hibs against Motherwell or Morton, and Rangers or Celtic versus St Johnstone or Clyde. Let's start with Martin, because your team's still to play their third
You
round game.
can fuck right off. I'm not actually checked with these yet.
Here we go. Forfar, Montrose, Cove Rangers, Stranraer.
Cove Rangers.
Cove
I'm
Rangers
sorry.
would be a great shout.
That cans went to my head, sorry.
James, what I was wondering, James, could you take note of the answers and we'll revisit it?
Because your pen and paper is actually out of work, Bruce.
No, because
Excuse me,
James
he's
normally
working from
has
home.
like the Six Nations and everything, so do you know?
Right.
James,
Right.
James, take note.
So, Bruce, if we go back over the fixtures here, looking at the first set of fixtures, we were talking about Livingston, Aberdeen, and then another two teams. I reckon Livy will win.
Forfar
that
and
group of four
Dundee.
fixtures. Yeah, Livy are going to take that.
Yeah.
And the next two fixtures were
Kilmarnock, Montrose versus St Mirren, Inverness.
I'll be honest, whoever goes through that is winning the next game anyway. They're going to lose that. They're not winning the cup. None of those teams are winning the cup. They're not important. Next round of fixtures.
I need a team if I'm taking notes.
Let's go Kilmarnock because they're going to get relegated anyway.
Brilliant. Stranraer, Queen of the South or Hibs versus Motherwell or Morton.
We know he's picking there, isn't he?
Well, Queen of
He
the
said
South,
Queen of the South.
that is a team, by the way. But I'm going to have to go with the people Hideys, in my opinion.
And Rangers or Celtic versus St Johnstone or Clyde.
I semi-fancy St Johnstone to do the cup double, so I'm going with St Johnstone.
And St
You
Johnstone
can
to win.
take a run and jump, do you know what I mean?
So you've managed to.
So wait a minute. I could have said Celtic and you would have been okay with that, but because I said St Johnstone,
I wouldn't
I'm
have been
going to
okay
take
with
a
that
run and
either.
jump.
You managed to offend both Bruce and I with your answer. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Impressive. That's impressive. He also managed
You're-
to offend me by saying that Queen of South is a great team, so well done, mate. He was offended in a matter of seconds.
So St Johnstone to win the whole thing for you, Martin.
Super G's are going to go very far. Hibs will put them at the League Cup and they will win the Scottish Cup final.
Right, that's plenty for you. I'm not going to go to James just yet
I
because
think
his
my
answer's
cans went to
predictable.
Martin's head.
Gav,
Yes.
go
Hello.
for it.
I think Livy, I'll have to say Livy will go through. I fancy Inverness. I don't know why. I fancy Inverness.
I
Go
thought
for
that.
Inverness.
I was saying towards that.
Just because St Mirren should have been relegated anyway, and Kilmarnock are shite.
No, right.
And if we're doing it the same order that Bruce mentioned it rather than what's on the paper here, I'm going to have to go with Ebbs.
Yes! Go on!
Sorry, I've got a bad gag reflex.
Drawing that cancel quickly.
No, it's just Hibs, they fucking shite, eh?
Yes!
And again, I fancy St Johnstone, but I'm not. I'm going to be controversial because Martin said St Johnstone. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go with
Gav's going to go
Rangers. No, I'm going to go Rangers. I'm not that stupid. I do think Rangers will beat Celtic. Sorry, James. I'd be quite impressed if you don't say Celtic, James. I would be very.
Who's to win the cup for you, Gavin?
Who's to win the cup, Gav?
See it.
Livy. The best
Oh,
team in Edinburgh,
Livingston.
apparently, are Lothians. Martin just like had a climax and then nothing. Story of his life.
You built me up. You built me up, and then there was nothing.
I just teased you.
Right, James, give us the expected goals verdict of the cup.
Well, I am going to go for Livingston to go through in the first set of fixtures. Then I'm
Anybody
going.
win Aberdeen?
No.
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 Nope.
Bruce will, because he likes sheep.
Is that because he has Velcro underpants?
Well, I'm just
that
going
one
to move
eyebrow.
on. I'm going to say St. Mirren to go through.
What?
Yes.
I'm with that.
And then I think Hibs to go through. And then I can't let my team down, Celtic. We played better against Rangers in the past 2 games. A victory is due.
Again, James, you're proving my point of that I made in my introduction, where you use the glasses to look smart rather than actually being smart. But who's going to win it, James?
Out of those teams, it's going to be Celtic winning the 5th Scottish Cup in a row, according to my calculations.
I'm still waiting for Hearts to get a European place from making the final last year, but let's not get into that.
We might make 10 in a row. We're halfway there if my predictions are correct. But
Then
without setting my hopes up.
Bruce, how do you feel about that?
That one eyebrow says it all. He doesn't have to open his mouth. He just got the...
He can only do it with that one eyebrow, though. Bruce, can you do the other eyebrow?
No.
So what's your predictions, Bruce?
Do you know something I'm not very happy about, James, but my prediction is pretty much the same as yours, except the end result. So I've also got Livingston, St Mirren, Hibs, Rangers, and then Rangers to win, because that's the most likely end solution.
Unless there's a massive slip. Stevie G's famous for it.
He does that.
He's got previous.
But Celtic are broken. So...
I'm sorry, you lagged there, what?
I said Celtic are broken, so...
Not as bad as Hearts, though.
Fair point.
Interestingly, we've got 4 different teams winning this thing, according to the official record, which I have.
So, what's the 4 winners?
That looks
Livy,
very professional.
Rangers, Celtic, and Hibs.
So, St Johnstone is Martin's prediction. Or was it?
Oh, yeah, you didn't predict Hibs.
Did anybody say Aberdeen to go through in the first?
No.
Everyone said Livingston to go through. And then it were 2 St Mirrens, 1 Inverness, and 1 Kilmarnock. Everyone said Hibs. And then we had 2 Rangers, 1 Celtic, and 1 St Johnstone. So they
with a St Johnstone, Celtic, Rangers, and Livy winners.
Yes.
If anybody is wildly out there on the first round at some point, and if Hibs win, Gav's on the first round.
I think that's fair.
How is that fair? James, how is that fair?
Well, here's the thing. If Celtic win, Bruce is on it. If Rangers win, then I'm on it. And then if Hearts win... Oh, wait.
Oh, James! I love you, James. You're awesome.
Yes. Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Sports Hut podcast. We have went through Scotland's international break. We went through Celtic managers, why we should get involved in Formula One, or at least watch it, and who is going to win the Scottish Cup. And in predictable fashion, we did not agree. But yes, let us know your thoughts on the topics. Make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube to ensure that you get notified when all the latest episodes are put up. And thanks for watching. Shahan's not here, so I'm going to do it.